Hi, everybody. It's just about 9 o'clock. This is Dan Cirucci. I'm here with Christine Flowers. I promised we would be here tonight to talk about a very hot topic. We're live on YouTube. We're on dancerucci.com on my webpage. I'm going to make sure right now that we are on Facebook. Um, if anybody wants to watch us there, we are also on LinkedIn. Okay. So we're pretty much everywhere. Oh, there we are on Facebook. Yes, I see we're there. Let me edit the audience and make sure that we're on. Oh, I can't see. Edit post. Uh, 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 uh. Oh, right now only I can see it. Well, you know what? I can always change that later. Anyway, I can see us on Facebook, but we're on several other outlets. So it doesn't really matter. Okay, so Christine, this is a very, I don't know, this has been a difficult time. I have to think, especially for you as a devout Catholic, you're very Catholic, you're publicly Catholic, you've fought battles on behalf of the church and the faith and so forth. And let me just put a little bit of an overview on this as best as I can, as briefly as I can. It's about a year, almost a year. We're coming up on the first anniversary since Pope Leo was chosen. You and I and millions of other people, maybe hundreds of millions, were thrilled. Especially here in America, we were thrilled. We had an American Pope. We are both Villanova is our alma mater. I did undergraduate there. You went to law school there. Okay. Right. So we're proud, very, very proud Villanovans. We were when I know you probably had the same reaction when I heard this man was chosen. I was with my little grandson, and I started crying, and my poor little grandson couldn't understand that I wasn't sad, that I was crying because I was happy.
Little Charlie.
Yeah, we had to explain it to him. And the expectations were so high. The first thing that I did, of course, was I lowered my expectations a little bit. And I thought, okay, this is great. Let's all take a deep breath. Let's all take a deep breath. And this man is going to ease into his role. I'm sure he's not going to do anything dramatic for a while, because he's such an unprecedented figure, okay? A relatively, by Pope standards, relatively young man, and his history-making figure. And I thought, well, he's going to proceed cautiously, at least in the beginning. Well, it didn't work out that way, Christine. What happened?
Danny, I had the same reaction that you did. I cried. I literally fell to my knees and started crying. I physically, I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit. I don't know what it was, but I physically felt this most amazing wash of joy over me. And the American part was the first part. When I heard that we have an American Pope, I thought, I never thought in my lifetime, I never ever believed that that was a possibility. And then when I found out that he had gone to Villanova, I kept thinking it was a joke, that somebody was pranking us. And when I found out that it was the truth, it was one of the most transcendental moments of my life. And as you said, I lowered my expectations only because I didn't want to be disappointed in someone that I was so excited about. At the beginning, he really did confirm my expectations in the sense that he was very well spoken. He seemed to be someone who was less radical, less political, less partisan than Francis. We had
Right.
Francis for 13, 14 years. And I remember, being increasingly um, depressed every time I heard that the Pope had said something, that Pope being Francis. I'm like, oh, Lord, what did he say now? Please
No,
get him off planes, because most of the things that he said that upset me were said while he was on a plane going to somewhere. And this Pope wasn't that way. He was almost more savvy, I think, more media savvy than Francis was. But little by little, I realized that although he was in many ways aligned with us as social conservatives in the sense that he is radically pro-life. I mean, he founded the pro-life club foundation at Villanova, which is still going strong. And he is against euthanasia, something that Francis didn't like to talk about that much. And he's very pro-traditional family, which means that the idea of same-sex marriage and the blessings that Pope Francis had accorded to same-sex marriage were probably not something that was going to happen on his watch, on Leo Robert Prevost's watch, Cardinal Prevost. However, he was more political than any of the popes that preceded him. Francis was political in certain ways, but that would be expected because he was an Argentinian and he had grown up under the Perón regime. So you can understand in a way why he would push back against what he thought was any kind of authoritarianism. Benedict was not political at all. Benedict was a scholar, and I'm going to say something probably very controversial, but I think probably in some ways even greater than John Paul II because of his humility, because of his willingness to sort of be a caretaker, and because he had the respect for the church and for us to step back, to actually say, this isn't about me. This is about what is best for the church, and I physically can no longer carry on. And although Pope John Paul II is, to me, the greatest pope
right.
and my saint and my hero, and his willingness to let us see him get sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker as an example that we are to respect all life from the moment that the spark of life goes into a child, which is conception, to the last moment before you meet God, that life matters. And he showed us that even diminished life matters. But to me, and I'm trying to be careful the way I say this. I think that Leo is a man of the world much more than a man of the spirit. And he is very cognizant of his role as a world leader. More so a world leader than a leader of his flock. And I see that with each passing day, with each.
Christine, I hate to interrupt, but I have never seen a pope have uh, media availabilities on the fly. Okay, so
Well,
this
Francis kind of did. Francis did.
I know, but Francis had these. He had like news conferences, like informal news conferences, on the plane when he was coming back from a pastoral visit. Okay.
Right.
That started with Francis. And by the way, when that started, I didn't like that at the time.
Not at all.
I didn't like it. Okay. But here with Leo, we have a pope that I don't know, somehow he's passing through the crowds um, at the Vatican, and all of a sudden microphones are stuck in his face, and he starts engaging with the media, and he starts making statements and comments off the cuff. Everything is fair game, and it's as if he's an elected politician. This is what it looks like, and I think it looks even more to us in America that way, because he's American and he's speaking American English.
Plus, he can vote. Plus, he has the right to vote, and that ability to vote means that he has a very real impact on the American electorate. It's only one vote, but it is mammoth in its influence. And I think that it's almost as if he is sort of criticizing his home country to ingratiate himself with the rest of the world. I have not heard him say one good thing.
That's a tremendous observation. Say that again, please.
I think that he's attacking his native country to ingratiate himself with the rest of the world that right now in particular has a great deal of animus towards the United States because of our White House and our administration. And
yeah, go ahead.
I'm just saying that he has, I mean, we're celebrating our 250th anniversary this year.
Right.
We here in the Philadelphia area and nationally. And he, in almost like a mean girl way, because he didn't like some of the things that Trump has said about him, which are, repellent, and Trump should really keep his mouth shut. But Trump is Trump, and we know that. And we just sort of discount that that's what he's going to do. But the Pope, in response, says, I'm not going to come to the United States. I'm going to deprive all of my Catholic brethren, American Catholic brethren, and Americans who are not Catholic of my presence. I'm going to shake my finger at you Americans for how bad you are.
I mean, the King and Queen of England are coming, okay? And this is unprecedented. It's unprecedented that the King of England would visit the United States the second time for the same president, okay? This is, except it's virtually, I don't know if it may have, it's virtually unprecedented, okay? The Vatican and the Pope have seemed to have gone out of their way to make it clear that he's not going to be here. Now, listen to this. A CBS poll asked this question, either Trump's overall job rating among Catholics, all right? And this poll was just done April 8th to the 10th. So it's very fresh. It's a CBS YouGov poll. Among Catholics who attend Mass regularly, weekly, Trump had a solid approval rating of 58% to 42%. And we know that in the last election, about 55% of Catholics voted for Trump. And by the way, the Catholic vote is a key vote in American elections. It's considered a swing vote.
Very true.
It's very hard to win the election without the Catholic vote. It's a very important vote. Now, among those who go to church less often or never, Catholics who go to church less often than weekly or never, the figures were reversed.
Exactly.
The approval rating was 42 approve, 58 disapprove. Now, what this is quite revealing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's obviously political. It is political because those who don't go to church, who are maybe Easter, Christmas, and
Ash
whatever,
Wednesday, don't forget the ashes.
and oh yeah, the ashes. They put
And
on the
Palm Sunday,
ashes
you
so
got to
that
get
they
your
look.
palms.
That kind of Catholic who's not truly a devout Catholic, but just someone who, puts on the Catholic robes for a couple of important holidays, they also tend to be more liberal. They tend to be more progressive. They tend to be the kind of, well, I wouldn't have an abortion, but I wouldn't want to tell anybody else not to have one. That
Right.
is not a Catholic. That kind of a person is someone who is maybe a cultural Catholic, somebody who was raised Catholic and then kind
Right.
of like looked at the church and said, it doesn't fit me too well. Nah, it shrunk in the wash. I think I'm going to get a new dress.
But
And
isn't ready to join any other religion either.
yeah, because I
Yeah.
don't think these are really spiritual people. I don't think these are people of faith. But I got to tell you something. I joined this Facebook group. I'm no longer a part of it. I withdrew. Called the Catholic Social Teaching, and from that name where I'm going with this. They were Dorothy Day Catholics. They were very liberal, progressive Catholics. And they adored Francis and now Leo. Everything they posted was, isn't
Yes.
he wonderful? And thank God he's against war. And thank God he's attacking Trump. It was a very political group. Every time I tried to post something about abortion, they would shut me down and they would say, well, pro-life means pro-life about everybody and against genocide in Gaza and against the war and against this and loving our LGBTQ rainbow community and this and that. And I was like, I know exactly what kind of a group this is.
Right.
That is the demographic that loves Leo right now.
But
They're,
that, remember, Leo welcomed a same-sex couple to the Vatican.
yeah, I mean,
Welcomed
there's
and
something
had
wrong
had
with
a
that,
meeting with
Dan.
them.
There's something wrong with that. The
Had a meeting with
church,
them.
the church should,
And also, Christine, as we know, last week he had a private meeting
yeah,
with Obama's former chief of staff, David Axelrod. He had a private meeting. He kept Italian Olympians waiting while he met privately
yes.
with Axelrod. And it was reported that the meeting may have touched upon the possibility of Obama coming to meet the Pope, or Obama and the Pope having some kind of meeting. By the way, both Chicagoans, in fact,
Yes.
all three of them Chicagoans, and
Yeah.
Axelrod Jewish.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know. I know.
What was that all about? What was that all about, Christine?
Well, listen, listen. I don't have a problem with President Obama meeting the Pope. President Obama was a president. He was a head of state. I see nothing wrong with that. JD Vance has seen him. Obama, I believe, met with who was the Pope when I don't know if he met with Benedict, but when he was a president, I would have had no problem with him doing that. What I don't like is meeting with these individuals and then coming out with pronouncements that are a direct hit on our current foreign policy.
Right,
Now,
right,
I posted something on my Facebook page. My friend Stephen Kasloff, who is not Catholic, he is Jewish, posted this fabulous article, which I reposted, saying essentially that failing to act when genocide is occurring or human rights are occurring is in and of itself an immoral act. And what he was basically saying was not intervening in what is happening in Iran and what has been happening for 4 decades in Iran
right.
is in and of itself immoral. War is not something that we want. However, and you know this as well as I do, being a Catholic all of your life, we have the just war principle. And it's not just self defense. War can be justified if it is in defense of others. And in this particular situation, there are women, there are dissidents, there are people who are being killed in Iran. That is the genocide.
Right,
That is the
right.
true definition of a genocide.
And this is, and by the way, this is laid out and is detailed, the circumstances under which war is legitimate in the Catholic Catechism.
Of course.
It's part of Catholic teaching. All right.
So war is not immoral in a vacuum.
No, no, and the greatest Catholic thinkers, including Saint Augustine and
Augustine, yeah.
Thomas Aquinas, laid this out and explained this. These people were Catholic scholars, okay? And if Benedict was here, who was the ultimate scholar pope, as we've noted, I think he was the ultimate scholar pope without question. He would be able to explain this in a minute, okay?
Right.
But now the Pope said today, here's what he said. He said this either today or yesterday. These are the exact words. I'm quoting him now. Jesus told us, he said, blessed are the peacemakers, but woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth, end quote. Jesus never said this.
I
Jesus
saw that.
Said, listen, are the peacemakers, but he never said the rest of that, Christine.
I saw that. He completely deformed the Beatitudes. Blessed are the peacemakers. That's what Jesus said, right?
For they will be called the children of God.
Exactly.
That's what he said.
Add all of this other stuff, which clearly is not biblical, has no grounding in catechism. He didn't quote Luke or Matthew or Mark or John or, Ephesians or St. Paul, Corinthians, nothing. He made it up. This is a Leoism. It's a Leoism.
In fact, it's a Leoism. In fact, Christine, I'm not sure the words military or economic are in the Bible at all.
I know. I know. I can't tell you, Danny, how many times I've had pro-choice Catholics tell me, well, abortion's not in the Bible. And I go, yeah, it's like the first commandment, thou shalt not kill. It's there,
Right.
So I don't know.
It's there. And so, Christine, believe me, it's there in so many ways. When Jesus said, take the little children to me, bring them, that is one of the most beautiful parts when he says, bring the little children to me.
Right.
Bring
or Jeremiah.
When you hurt a child that hasn't even been able to be born yet, and you hurt that child, think of what Jesus said.
Absolutely.
Bring the little children to me.
And Jeremiah, when it was, I'm not going to quote it correctly, but it was, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. How much more clear can it be that killing a child in the womb is heretical to the Christian faith and the Catholic faith?
Right.
There is no justification for abortion. However, there is a justification for war. And as you said, Aquinas and Augustine. And you know who was one of the greatest warriors of all? The founder of the Jesuits, St. Ignatius Loyola. They were warriors for the faith. So all of this, as the French would say, crapule and merde about,
Imagine a pope saying these things, juxtaposing things, inserting things that aren't in there.
Yeah.
Making these things, I don't know, I dare I say, making these things up on the fly.
I know.
This wasn't really the statement that I just read wasn't really on the fly. I mean, that was written beforehand. He was reading from a script.
I mean, it's like, who is tweeting this stuff out on the Pontifex? It's almost like he said, well, like Jesus said, and he really didn't really say, but kind of like his intention was this. And I mean, like, I'm paraphrasing Jesus right now. It is
Listen,
incomprehensible. Benedict
I
is
just
rolling in his holy grave.
I think it's a little bit dangerous when a pope paraphrases Jesus.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
because that's not what we're expecting. You are the Pope is the ultimate teacher of the faith. He is the ultimate teacher of the faith, or at least he should be. So he has to have incredible credibility. We have to be absolutely certain that he knows what he's talking about when he
right.
talks about Christ, when he talks about God, when he talks about faith and morals. Now, he's not we need to make this clear to people who this whole thing about infallibility of the Pope. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the Pope is only considered to be infallible when he speaks ex cathedra, which means from the chair, when he is speaking officially as the Pope and on faith and morals, as in an encyclical, for example, a
Exactly.
formal document.
Exactly.
Okay.
Any political statement, such as what he just made, that's not about church doctrine. It's not about spirituality, faith, and morals. It has to do
Right.
with his idea of what should be, what war is, what strategy is, what political issues. That is not ex cathedra, as you said, and so he's not infallible.
No.
You know what occurred to me, Dan? He's the very first boomer pope. He is the first pope that is of the boomer generation
Uh huh.
because he was born after 1946. He
Mm-hmm.
is 69. He's 5 years older than me. So he's definitely a boomer. Francis was not. Obviously, Benedict was not. They were of the greatest generation. And I think that that also has some impact on him because he grew up in the United States at a time when all of these squishy ideas about spirituality and faith and post Vatican II and all of this stuff were happening. And I wonder if he absorbed a lot of that growing up and also being an American, and American Catholics are a very different breed than Italian Catholics or Irish Catholics. I'm not
Oh,
talking about
oh,
American Irish
so
Catholics.
different. It's so different.
We've
Yes,
been taught, we've been taught that there has to be a separation between our faith and our civic life, and no other country has that formation as a Catholic.
I think it's also important to point out to people that Catholics are under no obligation to agree with the Pope when the Pope is speaking like this. We are under no obligation. We don't take orders from the Pope. We're under no obligation to agree with him. We can criticize the Pope. We can have these kinds of open debates. We even say, I'm not happy with the Pope, and we can still be very, very faithful Catholics. Okay, I don't
Thank you.
think a lot of people understand this even today.
Thank you for saying that. You can criticize the Pope and still be a Catholic. In fact, I think the best Catholics are the ones who are willing to hold our leaders to standards. I
That's
was watching that horrific, pathetic 60 Minutes interview on
Oh my
Sunday
God. Oh
where
my
they had the three most liberal wackadoodle bishops out there, particularly, and one of them, I forget, was it McCarrick? I don't remember, but the one who actually helped in the cover up of part of the
Yeah.
pedophilia scandal. And of course, now that he's against Donald Trump, the
Yes.
left embraces him. We'll etch a sketch his sin in not holding these criminal priests accountable because, well, he doesn't like Donald Trump. He's against Donald Trump. But I was watching that and I'm thinking to myself, these are not critics. These are not legitimate Catholic voices. because they're throwing themselves in with the Pope in order to be a weight against Donald Trump. And you know me, I criticize Trump a lot. I've been
Right.
on
I know
social
you do.
media for the past couple of days. I'm angry at what his administration is doing with immigration. I am livid about it, and I will criticize Trump down the line. But my criticisms are fair. I'm not going to criticize him for doing the right thing in Iran and doing the right thing with our national and foreign policy with respect to Iran. And I think a lot of these people who normally wouldn't have any time for the Catholic Church are thrilled to support this Pope because they see him as an antagonist for Donald Trump. And that's despicable.
And Christina, I want to speculate here as to where, aside from him being a Chicagoan, but of course that was a long time ago, as to where Pope Leo's problem with Trump may have begun. And you know, Christine, um, USAID US aid money historically went to Catholic Relief Services. And in fact, Catholic Relief Services, CRS, was the top nonprofit recipient of USAID funding, receiving, get ready for this, 4.6 billion, that's billion with a P, between fiscal years 2013 and 2022, often accounting for 50 to 60% of CRS's budget. And now you remember, Christine, when Trump came in this time around, he basically gutted USAID.
Yeah.
And there was Cardinal Prevost in Peru, okay, a company, a country, I'm sure, that got nice chunks of this money. Was that where the problem began, Christine? Is a lot of it about money?
I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, and full disclosure, I'm very much against what was done with USAID because a lot of that money was going to assist um, African countries in stopping the spread of AIDS and diseases. So, I
Okay.
mean, I completely disagree with what the Trump administration did. However, I think you do have your finger on something, and it's not about the money. I think it's about immigration, and I think it's about the whole idea of third world countries. And Peru is where he was. He was the cardinal of Archbishop of Peru or the cardinal of Peru for many years. I think over 30 years. He's a Peruvian citizen. In fact, he's a dual American and Peruvian citizen, and I think he saw up close a lot of the problems that people in these countries have to deal with: poverty, illiteracy, climate issues. I'm not supporting any kind of animus that he may have towards the Trump administration politically, but I do understand that he has a very deep understanding of mission work. And perhaps, I mean, you say economics. It may have something to do with the fact that he believes that the infrastructure that was created and built and fostered by the United States through Catholic Relief Services and Catholic Charities is falling apart. That I don't believe, though, is the reason that he has an issue with Donald Trump,
But this time
because
as a missionary gave
that's
him
it.
gave him a social justice mindset, huh?
Very much so. Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, before he became Pope, he was tweeting out criticisms of J.D. Vance and President Trump.
Oh yes.
Um,
Oh
so
yeah.
So this is not a recent problem with him.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
This predates him, and that came out. I remember when he was elevated, a lot of people, a lot of conservatives were like, "Well, wait a minute, did you see what he
Yes,
tweeted about Trump?"
I knew that. I knew that after he was chosen pope and these things came out, and I knew that. But I said to myself, okay, but he was acting in this capacity. He was a missionary and so
Yeah,
forth. But now he's pope. So he's the pope. So it's a different situation now. And he's got to be sensitive. He's a world leader in
right,
his own right. In the community of world leaders.
right.
So he's got to be sensitive. Leads me to wonder, like, wouldn't it have been better if, and I don't know, maybe they did, but there's little evidence of it, that if the Vatican had communicated these misgivings and these concerns privately, the Pope went public on this quite quickly. I mean, I did a timeline on dancerucci.com on my webpage. I went back and I researched it and I did the complete timeline. And it was only a matter of, I think it was in like 1 month and it started
Yeah.
the criticism of Trump as Pope. I mean, what the hell? What's that all about?
And again, I bring it back to something that I said earlier. I think, we were so excited that he was an American, but as I said before, he's a Peruvian citizen. He's an American. You never lose your American citizenship unless you willingly renounce your citizenship,
Right.
or you're denaturalized if you were a naturalized citizen. But he chose to become a Peruvian citizen, which was already for me a sign that he was not as tied to his American identity as all of us thought or hoped.
Mhm.
He is an internationalist. He is, in a weird way, I don't want to say embarrassed, but as I said before, he almost wants to compensate for being an American
Mhm.
by heightening the criticism of the United States. You never remember Pope John Paul II, Karol Wojtyla, criticizing his homeland as a homeland. What he did was he brought down the Iron Curtain and crushed the, Jaruzelski and martial law in his country. But he never attacked the Polish people. He
No,
loved
he was very, very proud of his Polish heritage.
he
There was
loved his
no
country.
question about that whatsoever. I mean, his heart was true to his native land, and he made no apologies for it.
And Bergoglio was a proud Argentinian. I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
I don't get the sense. I haven't said this before. This is the first time I've said this. In some ways, I feel as if the Pope is ashamed of being American right now. And he's backing away from it. And in the best way to do that is to basically do what the Dixie Chicks did. Remember when they were abroad? They criticized the United States and George Bush when they were out of the country. That is the worst insult that you can do. You can criticize your country while you're here and work to change it. But going abroad and criticizing it, you
Hmm.
don't do that. And
And
it
Obama
really,
went abroad and apologized to other countries.
that's kind of what the Pope is doing right now.
Hmm.
And it really saddens me. My column on Sunday is about this. It's
Oh, I
not,
look
I
forward
don't
to it.
make this statement, but I do talk about, how saddened I am by what is happening with this Pope.
Here's
And
what Trump said today. Trump said, I'm quoting him now, and this was, reporters found him, I don't know, outside the White House. The Pope has to understand that it's very simple. I have nothing against the Pope. I have to do what is right. I'm not fighting with him. The Pope made a statement. He says Iran can have a nuclear weapon. I say Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the Pope looked at the 42,000 people that were killed over the last 2 or 3 months as a protester with no weapons, no nothing, I mean, you take a look at that. So I can disagree with the Pope. I have a right to disagree. That's what the president said.
It's excellent. It's excellent. It's exactly the tone that he should have taken from the beginning.
And
Because
yes, he should have, of course.
that is the Trump that I admire.
Mm-hmm.
When he gets down and dirty and starts criticizing and throwing these insults, and I know his some in the MAGA base love that. They love that attitude. It really turns people off. It turns people like me off.
Yes.
I want to like and respect my president. And when he does things like that, I don't. I don't like him at all, and I don't respect him at all. But when he does what he did today, I say, right on, Mr. President. And I'm on your side. I'm on Team Trump as opposed to Team Leo. Because for Leo to say it's okay, did he really say it was okay for Iran to have nuclear weapons? Did he really say that? Because if he said that, he's lost me
Well,
forever.
I think that what Trump is saying was that by his silence, okay, and by not supporting the efforts to take the nuclear weapons away from Iran, he was saying, in effect, that, yeah, though, I guess it's all right. Don't do anything. Leave it alone. And of course, a lot of people have criticized the Pope for not speaking out against not only the massacres in Iran and the bloodthirsty regime that has run the country for 47, 48 years, but also not speaking out against the persecution of Christians in other countries. Okay?
The massacre of Christians in Nigeria on Palm
Yeah.
Sunday. He didn't say a thing about it. And yet, he goes to Algeria, a country that persecutes Christians. I wrote on my Facebook page, I had a client many years ago, a woman, Algerian woman, Muslim. She married a man from Chile, a Catholic. Her family put a fatwa out on her head. They wanted her killed. These were Muslims, Algerian Muslims, who wanted their daughter dead because she married out of the Muslim faith. And in particular, she married a Christian. And I said, the Pope is reaching out to Algeria at the same time that he is ignoring the murder by Islamic fundamentalists of Christians in Nigeria. What is up with that? There is something wrong there.
Going into a mosque and taking his shoes off, okay?
Or an Islamic prayer room at the Vatican. You go into any mosque, is there going to be an altar with a statue of the Virgin Mary? I don't think so.
I mean, we're laughing, but it's really very sad. It's really very sad.
It's infuriating, Dan. It angers me. And there are Catholics, our fellow Catholics, who would attack us for criticizing him. They're like, if you criticize the Pope, you're not Catholic. And most of these are the 48% that, or the 52% that hate Trump and, they don't go to church. They only go to church on holidays. These are people who are not true Catholics. These are people who are, I call them politico-Catholics. They're Catholics when it looks like the church is supporting Catholic social theory and Catholic social justice. They're Catholics for Joe Biden. They're Catholics for Nancy Pelosi. They're Catholics who say, like Mario Cuomo once said, I don't want to impose my pro-life beliefs on other people. But God forbid that you say anything conservative politically and they will jump down your throat. They're not on my team. They're not my tribe.
Yeah, and we're also touching, Christine, here upon um, what I call Catholic light, or the uh, diminution of Catholic teachings, of the Catholic doctrine, and sort of loosening up Catholicism, making it touchy feely. I call it the sort of Hallmark card Catholicism. Okay, which we are seeing so much of, and this certainly didn't start with Leo. It goes back all through Pope Francis. All right, um, who I can't even begin to calculate the damage I think he did.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just feel that people were drawn to the Catholic Church in the first place because it was solid, because there were clear rules,
Yeah.
because
It's
it
the
was
rock of Peter, not the beanbag of Peter.
because dare I use the word, it was rigid.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and for people that were lost for any one of millions of reasons. All right, because after all, we're only human, and we're sinners. This had a powerful pull, and those nuns and priests of yesteryear, and by the way, they were not perfect either, but they knew this, and they knew what they were doing when they laid down the doctrine. And now most people couldn't even tell you what the doctrine is. They couldn't even tell you the most simple precepts of the church. They call themselves Catholics. They cannot tell you the most simple precepts of the church. And they will routinely say, "Oh, well, yeah, but that's not really the body and blood of Christ. But I go and I."
Yeah. Yeah. Or they say things like, you know, oh, the Pope is infallible. But as you quite rightly pointed out, he's only infallible when he's speaking on church doctrine ex cathedra.
Right.
Or they'll say, oh, the just war theory is only when we're defending ourselves. That's not true. That is not true at all. You are defending yourself, or you are defending others against a greater evil. And that's why the war in Iran is, whether it's called a war or an invasion or whatever you want to call it, it's justified. Um, I hate, my last column was about how I hate the way that people manipulate words, manipulate war crimes. Remember when Donald Trump was accused of war crimes?
Oh yeah.
Because he talked about the elimination of the civilization of Iran, or genocide. There's a genocide in Gaza. No, there's no genocide. Well, I mean, that is exactly what you're talking about when you talk about the dumbing down of Catholics who don't understand our own principles, morals, standards, catechesis. Um, it I mean, you're just a little bit older than me, not a lot, a little bit older than me. You fortunately had your formation when the church was really strong in forming students and making sure that you understood the catechism. I'm from that bridge generation. I'm a late boomer, very late boomer, touching on Gen X, where unfortunately I was the first generation to have guitar masses. Blech, 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 guitar masses. I mean, that is like, to me, it's like having Peter, Paul, and Mary conduct the mass for you.
The folk mass.
Yeah, exactly. The kumbaya and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
and and we lost, unfortunately, a lot of the formation. When I was little, we had that.
Yes.
When I was at Holy Child in Logan, we had that. But as I progressed, it became much more touchy feely.
One of the worst things we lost, and this was so important at one time to the Italian Catholic Church, and if you go to Italy, you'll still see it, is the veneration of the saints.
Yes. Oh
Veneration
my
of-
God. Yes.
All right. Suddenly, One day, the saints disappeared from Catholic churches. They I grew up in an Italian Catholic church where the sidewalls of the church were lined with the altars of the different saints. Okay,
Yeah.
where you went to your saint because that saint was going to be the intermediary for you
Right.
to get to the big guy. Okay,
Right.
this
Well,
saint,
remember how the
like, this saint
Protestants
is
used.
like your personal, Catholic partner.
Thank you. Remember how the Protestants used to make fun of us, and they would say that we were blasphemers because we prayed to the saints as if they were divine. And when you tried to explain that they were intercessors, that they
Yes,
were kind of like the middleman, we prayed to them because they had once been human, and now they surrounded the Lord, they were close to the Lord, and
and
it was a personal thing. They
they were
didn't
the
get it.
martyrs. They were the martyrs. They were the warriors of the church. They were the they many of them, perhaps most of them, literally gave their lives for the church.
The martyrs, the Christian
Yes,
martyrs. My
yes.
favorite, my favorite saint of all is Saint Michael. I mean, gotta love a saint with a sword, right?
Mhm.
He's my absolute favorite. I love Saint Lucy, the Virgin Martyr. Saint Maria Goretti, Saint Christine, who was a martyr. Saint Agatha. All of these, and many of them are women. Some of
Well,
the Saint Joan of Arc. Some of the strongest women, some of the strongest people in the church are women.
right.
That's another, we can have that conversation for another day when they're saying that the church is anti woman. No, it's not.
No,
It
there's
venerates us.
always been a place for women in the church, a very prominent place. And we haven't even
Very.
touched, of course, upon the Blessed Mother herself. Okay, which
Yes.
is the ultimate, and now the church has said that the Blessed Mother is no longer mediatrix to Christ. To me, this is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, I
And
don't know who came up with that one.
that recently came down, uh, was promulgated by the Vatican. That
Yeah, no, to me, she's a mediatrix. I don't care what the church says.
she's the ultimate mediatrix.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
above all, absolutely.
exactly.
And see,
I
this
have
is
my own little posse of saints, and then Mary. Mary's top, and then I've got Saint Teresa of the Little Flower, Saint Lucy, Saint Christine, Saint Barbara, and Saint Maria Goretti. Those are my gals.
they're very big in many of the Philadelphia parishes. Thank God. Still, I would hope. Okay.
You
Uh,
mentioned the Italian churches. Fortunately, in the churches in South Philly and some of them in West Philly, in Overbrook, St.
yeah.
Donat, well, St. Donat is, a lot of them closed, but a lot of the churches in South Philly, they still do have the statues of the saints. So you
Yes.
can go in there and still see that.
When they have the Italian Market Festival on the Sunday of the Italian Market Festival, they have the Italian procession of the saints in the streets. It is an
That's right.
old Italian custom. The statues of the saints, I remember it as a little boy, okay,
Yeah.
out of the church, and they are paraded in the streets. They are worshiped in the streets. And the followers of the different saints follow behind their saint. There's a band at the head of it,
Yeah.
and it is a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch. People, of course, pin dollars on
Yeah.
the ribbons from the saints. It's unbelievably, extremely, it's emotional. It's very spiritual.
Yeah.
It's uh, it's a celebration, and when I think it was like, uh, these, in many cases, of course, these churches were started by immigrants. They went out into the streets and they were saying, "We are here." This is our faith. This is who we are, and we are going to celebrate it proudly. It's
That's
a
exactly, the church sustained a lot of those immigrants who were discriminated against, who were poor,
right.
who had fled, horrific conditions in their home countries. They were sad, they were lonely, they missed home, and the church was a great support for them. And those generations have faded away, sadly. And I do think that we really need to cling to those traditions and be very publicly Catholic. That's what I don't like, what I think the Pope is doing. He is apologizing to the world for being an American Catholic. And I am damn proud of being a Catholic in the United States.
I,
And no
I,
one is
I
going to tell me how to live my faith and what is legitimate and what is not. Not even my Pope.
absolutely. I think you've made a very good point there, Christine. And we've been at this almost an hour. But one other thing I wanted to mention, I do think, and person I'm going to mention is on the road to sainthood, and rightfully so. We could use him a real nail, and that is Bishop Sheen, Bishop Fulton Sheen. Of course,
Bishop
I
Fulton
remember,
Sheen.
I remember when Bishop Sheen was on television, and I remember his lectures, and he held people spellbound. He was only him and a blackboard and a piece of chalk. That was it. That was it. He didn't have any special effects. He didn't have any electronics. It was rudimentary. He was in black and white. Now you go back and look at his telecasts now if you want to know what the Catholic Church is all about. Okay, this man knew how to make it meaningful to people and make it understandable. He made the doctrine of the church, which they scholarly things, complicated things, understandable to ordinary people. He was obviously he was a product of the Holy Spirit. I mean,
He had a very close attachment to Philadelphia as well. He loved Holy Child Parish in Logan, which was my old parish. I made my first Holy Communion there. Someone had told me that he used to call it the Cathedral of North Broad Street, and he I mean, who would not love Philadelphia?
right.
We had one of the strongest archdioceses. And I'm going to say this in closing. We talk about political popes, right? We talk about partisanship. To me, one of the greatest prelates that we have had in Philadelphia is Archbishop Chaput.
Oh yeah.
That man should have been a cardinal.
Oh
And
yes.
the only reason he was not was because of politics and
Absolutely.
partisanship. And
Absolutely.
Francis had animus towards him.
Yes.
And so, anybody who talks about, oh, the popes are above all of this, and we shouldn't attack them for being partisan and political and what have you. We have a lot of examples of partisanship and political maneuvering on the part of certain popes, and they get excused because their politics aligned with a certain demographic in the United States. And I am praying for this Pope. I still have hope for him. I'm still rooting for him. I want him to be what I think he could be. But lately, he's really disappointing me.
And I think it would be, we seem to be on the heels perhaps of a peace agreement. We're hoping and praying. I think it might be good for the Pope to just step back for a while.
Yeah, he shouldn't be a protagonist in this right now. He really shouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, he's been very, very evident, very vocal, very, very present. As we said earlier, almost as much as a public official, which he is not an elected public official. And I think it might be a good idea for him to step back for a while.
Yeah. He's the head of state of the Vatican, so let him tend to his own issues there.
That's right. And there are significant issues there. Absolutely. Christine, this has been wonderful. We're just about, we're exactly at an hour. There we are. And thank you so much.
Oh, I love you. And this is exactly what we should be talking about, you and me. This is our bread and butter. We're Catholics, we're Italians, we're Americans. We love this country, we love our church. We have no problem opening our mouths because we're Italian. And and I thank you for letting me have this conversation with one of the people I love most in the world.
Oh, the feeling is mutual. And this is, it's on my website, dancirucci.com. So people are going to be able to watch this. It's going to be pinned to the top of my Facebook page. I invite you to pick it up from the Facebook page or the website and
I'm
put it in
posting
your
it as soon as I get off here.
right. And it's on LinkedIn as well. So hopefully it'll get some good exposure. And thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
It's been fantastic. Let's do it again.
We will.
And I'll inbox you about dinner.
Will you please, so we can get together? That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. We're going to go and eat
Mangia,
Italian.
mangia, mangia.
Mangiamo, facciamo una cena insieme. Mua,
Thank
ti voglio
you.
bene.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Ciao, ciao.